Hello and welcome to the NESN Soccer Show. I'm Mark, you're Marcus, and this is the show where we love breaking down Champions League.
Yeah, when it's on.
When it's on, and those are always the best weeks, my favorite weeks. There was like a lot of surprising results in this most recent match day.
Yeah.
But as the dust settles and only 2 matches remain in group play, one thing that we've noticed is that the Premier League is doing very well.
They're back.
Something that, hasn't necessarily been the case recently. And they have 5 clubs in the competition, and it looks like all 5 could advance to the knockout round of 16. Which, it's tough for any league to have all their teams advance, and if you have 5 in the competition, that's something else. But what do you think can we attribute the Premier League success to, so far?
The Premier League, the big guns in the Premier League have gotten their act together.
Yeah.
Finally. When I was writing, week in, week out about the Premier League in, let's say 2011, 12, 13, 14, what I noticed was that the games I was watching and the teams I was watching were not that good relative to their recent past and their contemporaries that are the best teams in Europe. And I think right around when Leicester City won the title, and that was in 2016, I believe, that sort of represented a change where the other teams were like, we have to get our act back together.
Like if Leicester City's winning our league, that's not good.
Right. Every team, the Manchester Uniteds, the Manchester Cities, the Chelseas, the Tottenhams, and Liverpool as well, every team is now better than they were 2 years ago. And that just comes from good administration, making the right decisions in terms of bringing in players, bringing in coaches. Every team has improved, and you're now seeing the results.
It's sort of inevitable for any club, I think an individual club, to have its peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
And as a league, I think the Premier League may have sort of dipped. When you purely look at the results of European play, that did happen. But the best quality to have is the ability to self-correct.
Right.
And it seems like they've done that.
And the money helps.
Right, and they do have, I guess, the biggest TV contract of any league in the world.
Yeah. So eventually, when you start buying certain players and you bring in the biggest name coaches and you pay them the most money, they're gonna make the right calls, and you start to see steady improvement.
Right.
So, and then 2 other things were happening. Barcelona and Real Madrid were at astronomical heights that really no team has reached in decades, and now maybe they're falling back to earth just a little bit at the same time.
Beyond that, and I guess PSG has sort of remained at that level, but you look at the other major countries, the PSG and Bayern Munich and Juventus and Serie A all kind of had really, really great clubs, and were probably contributing to maybe like round of 16 and quarterfinal eliminations of Premier League teams.
Right.
So yeah, it all kind of evens out. But this go around, the Premier League is performing well. Most recent match day, we'll just go through the biggest match. Tottenham took down Real Madrid, and you just mentioned how Real Madrid was has been in recent years, the mega club. Cristiano Ronaldo, Gareth Bale. But they took them down 3-1. Huge result for Tottenham, who now leads the group with 10 points. Real Madrid at 3. Dortmund down at 2.
Ooh.
So they've really they've succumbed to the group of death, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I think it's really surprising to pretty much everybody that Tottenham's on top of this group.
Yeah, Tottenham's win over Real Madrid, that was yesterday at Wembley Stadium. Some were calling it the biggest win in their history, the biggest European win in their history. They played well. They played like Tottenham plays right now with an identity. When you watch them, you say that's Tottenham playing. And for me as an observer, that's pretty much the highest compliment I can pay to a team, which is that you know what you're going to get when you turn the television on.
Yeah.
Now, one thing you have to remember about Real Madrid yesterday is that Keylor Navas, their goalkeeper, didn't play. Rafael Varane, one of their top 2 center backs, didn't play, and Gareth Bale's been injured. He didn't play. So 3 of their leading players were out, but still full credit to Tottenham for beating Real Madrid.
And Ronaldo was pretty critical of his club, right?
Well, Ronaldo, 2 things that came out. He gave a fairly explosive interview to television reporters after the game, and he said one thing. He said a number of things. One of them was, I'm not going to renew my contract. It expires in 2021. Why he said that now, with 4 years remaining on his contract, I don't know.
I think he was just still upset about the match.
Well, you know,
he might be telling the truth, and that might happen.
He said, I'm fine with my contract, but I'm not going to renew. And then he repeated that he's not going to renew it. So Cristiano Ronaldo will be gone from Real Madrid by 2021, if not earlier. That was news. But he also blasted the Real Madrid's transfer activity, saying letting Pepe go, letting James Rodriguez go, and there was another one whose name escapes me at the moment, but he said letting them go weakened the squad because they are players who you could depend on over the years,
right? And
now they're trying to depend on younger players from their academy who go through their own ups and downs.
It's interesting that he kind of brings up the transactions, because I feel like he might only be saying that if he. Because you might say, oh, it's only one match, it's only one loss.
Yeah.
And that's true. And Real Madrid...
But they lost the Saturday before in La Liga against Girona.
So maybe he's sort of sitting there thinking, looking around, this isn't the quality of team that I know we have to win this competition. And he knows what it takes to win that competition and to win La Liga. And maybe he's looking around and just already can see we don't have it. And he's voicing his opinions, and it sort of does open the door for the Premier League. If a power like Real Madrid isn't playing well, and we look around and Juventus isn't necessarily dominant looking, neither is Bayern Munich. So can a Premier League team take home the Champions League title this season?
Yes.
Yeah. Who do you like best? Because we got 5 teams to choose from.
It's got to be Manchester City at this point.
Yeah.
If you have to pick one. Manchester United, I don't think they're at that level required.
Tottenham is playing like world beaters right now.
Tottenham
and Harry Kane is king of the world.
And Harry Kane is the king of the world. I just assume Tottenham will blow it because that's
what they do.
That's what they do.
That's harsh.
Yeah.
You can overcome it. Everybody overcomes their
well, yesterday was a moment where I said, okay, I have to start respecting Tottenham and taking them seriously as potential champions in England. I don't see them as potential European champions, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the quarterfinals, maybe semifinals. But of the 5 English teams right now still in the mix, I think Manchester City has, they have both the experience at the Champions League knockout round level, and they're just playing so well this season. They're tearing through the Premier League so far in the first 2 months. So you have to tip them.
And it's funny that we're talking about all these Premier League clubs, and Chelsea, the one that maybe has had the most recent European success, having won in 2012, but also performing well since then, they're maybe performing the worst out of these 5 clubs. They just lost to Roma on the road 3-0. And they're sitting in second place in their group, but that also has a lot to do with Atletico Madrid really not playing well.
Yeah.
So they're almost getting lucky, you could say. And also Liverpool is in a very easy group and hasn't really been able to take a strong hold on it.
Right.
They lead the group by 1 point, and people think they should maybe be up by a little bit more than that.
Yeah, given Chelsea's and Liverpool's struggles in the Premier League this season, I mean, Chelsea coach Antonio Conte came out and said if we lose to Manchester United on Saturday, on Sunday we're out of the title race. So, Liverpool, they're
so drastic and dramatic.
Yeah. But when you look at where they are and how many losses they have, you can only afford to lose 5 or 6 games in the Premier League if you want to win the title.
Right.
And, that's kind of on the top end.
It's a lot of pressure.
Given their struggles in the Premier League, I don't see Chelsea or Liverpool going far in the Champions League.
Okay.
Depending on what they do, maybe in the January transfer window, if they bring somebody in that can turn things around and make them a higher level, higher performing team, that's one thing. But you usually don't see those deals in January.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you said you like Man City
Yeah.
best. They won 3-2 over Napoli in the last match day, and Sergio Aguero became Man City's all-time leading scorer. So we just sort of wanted to bring up the question: how good is he in the grand scheme of things in this era of Messi, Ronaldo? Players like this may be forgotten.
Aguero is one of the greatest strikers the Premier League has ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's it's kind of funny when you think about what his career, because when he plays for Argentina, not first choice at all. Gonzalo Higuain was playing in all the biggest games.
That's almost
as a
surprising.
starter.
And he's very good, but
He is, but Aguero is Aguero, and his strike rate in the Premier League is, I think he's got the highest number of goals per 90 minutes of any striker that's played 100 games or something like that. I mean, he is an all-time great Premier League striker. What he hasn't been able to do with Manchester City is transfer that into Champions League goals, or at least in the biggest games, and international with Argentina. So he's great. He's one of the best number 9s in the world, but there's always something a little bit missing. Now, in terms of Manchester City's history, he's on top. He's their record goal scorer. He won them the title with that goal in 2012. So he's the best in the club history, and he represents what that club has become under the sheikhs who own the team. And they've taken him from a Premier League side that'll struggle against relegation more often than not to one that can expect to win the league every second or third season.
Right. Well, it's this will make for a very interesting knockout rounds if some Premier League clubs can end up matched up against each other, and those matches in England, it's just the place will be nuts.
Looks bound to happen.
Yeah, so at least we'll get at least one. I feel like
unless
we could
they
get
all
more.
go out in the round of 16, which
I don't think that'll happen. Could they not be matched up in the round of 16?
I'm not sure how the draw works, but if there are 5 of them out of 16, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll see.
Worry about that in December.
Anything else on the Champions League before we move on? That was the big chunk. We jumped around a lot from what we had on our rundown.
No, it's been a little more. The group stage has been much more interesting this season.
I would say that,
than it has in years past.
It's just some unexpected victories and
when we
draws.
did the preview, it was almost like, all right, here we go: Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. And it's been. I've been pleasantly surprised through the first 4 games out of 6.
It's been very interesting to keep track of. Also interesting to keep track of, more or less, MLS Cup playoffs. The conference semifinals, or as I like to call them, the league quarterfinals, are fully underway. First legs are complete. Second legs coming up. We wanted to focus in on the Columbus Crew match for a minute because, if you've been following the show or following soccer in the United States, Columbus Crew, there's a lot of talk about them moving to Austin, Texas, and Save the Crew, hashtag Save the Crew.
It's a movement all over MLS.
It's a big MLS thing, obviously huge in Columbus, and the match was a fantastic atmosphere. Columbus Crew won 4-1, so they're in a great position to advance and hopefully have another home match. But there was a lot of chants, Save the Crew, but also chants at the owner. We don't like you very much. A little more vulgar than that.
Yeah, F you. No, those were the lyrics.
So, I mean, just what's your sort of takeaway from this? Is there any sort of I'm proud of the fans of Columbus, anything along those lines for you?
Oh, they definitely stood up and made themselves heard, which, I kind of thought that maybe this would be the last home game of the season. And, I made it a point to tune in and watch it because not to see how the game transpired, but I was more watching and listening to the fans than the actual game. Now, it turns out the game itself was pretty good. It was open-ended, wild, really. And, New York, they were down 1-0. One of their defenders was sent off, and then Columbus opened it up. So it was almost a celebration of all things Crew for one night. But the unity was definitely between the players and the fans. And the fans made their displeasure well known. There were banners and signs all over the stadium. The Nordeck was that's their supporters where they sit. They were loud and they were proud, and chant flags and signs everywhere. So.
And there was a significant layoff from like this sort of news breaking, and this game actually taking place. It's been like 2 weeks.
Right. So they had 2 or 3 weeks to prepare, and given the 4-1 win in the first leg, they're going to have another couple weeks to prepare for another one. So the attendance wasn't at capacity, but give it 2 more weeks. I think you'll see a little something else bubble up.
Elsewhere in the MLS quarterfinals, Vancouver and Seattle in the Western Conference. Vancouver and Seattle and Houston and Portland both played to 0-0 ties.
Yeah.
Now we talk about how great the atmosphere and the game was for Columbus Crew.
Yeah.
This is sort of the other side where it's like, not the best thing to watch.
When those series are,
but
when they start.
Toronto FC played a good match against New York Red Bulls, winning on the road, sort of continuing their march. And they looked very good.
The main thing that came out of that one was the venom that the New York Red Bulls fans had for Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore.
Yeah.
I think they were booed every time they touched the ball.
I like that happened.
Yep. Some of it did cross the line with Josie Altidore, with people taking him on for how he stands during the national anthem. He's a Jehovah's Witness, and part of his belief isn't to hold your hand on the heart. So
really?
Toronto coach Greg Vanney came out, and there was almost an altercation between the Toronto bench and some fans in New York, and he talked about the need to kind of control that area and keep, he exchanged words with one of the fans, but Bradley and Altidore both came out and said, in terms of the being booed for the United States' failure to qualify for the World Cup, they're all for it. It kind of represents the fans, the passion that the fans have, but you can't cross the line with it. And
right.
There's now a campaign for that for a reason.
Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't know about all of that, but
that's what I'm here for.
I initially was kind of happy that they were getting booed.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to cross the line.
Right. But being booed for the national team screwing up royally in 2017, that's great.
That's fair game.
Yeah. Every single touch, you could hear a smattering of boos.
Yeah.
So, and these are both guys that started their career with that organization when they were, I'm not sure if they were the Metro Stars back then, but so it's almost like they were coming home, but rude welcome. But they'll go back to Toronto and probably win by 7.
Okay, so moving on to some U.S. soccer news as we talk about Altidore and Bradley getting booed for their failure. There's still an opening for this head coaching job of USA Soccer. Gerardo Tata Martino reportedly turned down the job to stay with Atlanta, which is kind of surprising because why would somebody do that?
Well, you in most countries and in a lot of countries, I wouldn't say every country, but the national team job is, we would think that is the highest soccer office in the land.
Yeah.
And this report came out of TYC Sports, which is a well-connected Argentinian media outlet.
Yeah.
Martino is from Argentina, and he's got loads of contacts down there. So, you have to give this one a little bit of credibility. He's really popular. Everyone loves how Atlanta United plays, and he turns it down to continue with Atlanta, which is by, other than on the field, but in many respects, they are the leading team in MLS in terms of any number of off-field metrics. So it's almost like he's saying, this gig I have now is
pretty great,
better than...
I mean, I don't know the exact number, but they had several matches where they were close to 70,000 fans in attendance, which is, I mean, there's many European clubs where their stadiums don't even get that big, and they struggle to get those sort of numbers.
Some NFL teams aren't hitting
those
numbers.
NFL teams aren't getting that much. So it is kind of the one argument for it, where like, well, if you are feeling good having that position, maybe it doesn't make sense.
It's just another point to say this is how big this Atlanta United thing is.
Yeah.
Is that U.S. Soccer Federation can't even poach their coach.
Right.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, looking towards, I guess, after the World Cup. Javier Mascherano reportedly wants to come to MLS after the World Cup.
This came out of the Spanish newspaper Sport. I'm always wary of things that come out of Spanish newspapers, but Javier Mascherano confirmed that he was going to retire from Argentina after the 2018 World Cup. His contract with Barcelona is also expiring, so I could see this one happening. He hasn't come out and said anything himself about it, but
makes sense.
You know, MLS has moved away in the past few years, moved away from the aging stars that play for the big or even middle European clubs towards younger ones. And you know, my initial reaction was maybe Mascherano's over the hill, but he'll be 34 just before the World Cup. He's just head and shoulders above all but a few players in his generation. And when you have a chance to bring somebody of that level, of that pedigree into the league, it's kind of like when Pirlo came to New York City FC. You know, everybody knew that he was on the back end last couple years of his career, but certain players are so good that you bring them in and
they can only help.
They can only help. So I would love to see Javier Mascherano playing over here.
Okay, so that's it for sort of the news of the week, but looking ahead, matches of the weekend, the MLS Cup, conference semifinals, second legs are all taking place. We're recording this on November 2nd, and Vancouver versus Seattle is tonight. Late night, 10:30 start. Then the rest of the matches are on the 5th, which is Sunday. So a lot to keep track of there. I think you're kind of hoping for more out of the Western Conference matches. And
the first Vancouver-Seattle game, 0-0. Vancouver set up to, they played ultra defensively at home in their home game because they didn't want to give up the away goal. I don't see Seattle doing that. They're the big dogs in the Western. I mean, Vancouver might be a higher seed, but Seattle has the you know, they're the quote unquote bigger club in that matchup. So that should be better. It was 0-0 in the first game. Houston-Portland. Portland's got an injury crisis. That could go either way. Houston's been, you know, they haven't been great in terms of quality, but tons of pluck, tons of determination. New York City, Toronto, as I said earlier, Toronto's
going to win
all the way.
Well, instead of just going, do you think there's anybody left that could realistically stop Toronto? I mean,
sure, themselves.
I kind of look at the final as just one match, and you kind of anything can happen.
Toronto versus Toronto reserves.
Well, all right. So
no, I'm not ready to crown them yet.
But
Columbus actually, you know, they've been playing very well in recent months, and they ended the season very strong. And you know, there's something about MLS.
Save the crew.
Once you get that momentum behind you in August, September, it can carry you through. So I don't see them blowing that 3-goal lead they have against New York.
I think they'll advance for sure. Across the pond, in the Bundesliga on Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dortmund and Bayern Munich in Dortmund. I look at Dortmund's European play, and they're struggling, but they're doing pretty well in Bundesliga. And Bayern Munich is shooting up the standings.
I think Bayern Munich just overtook Dortmund for first in the Bundesliga last week. This is a game that I circled on my calendar months ago, thinking it would be, you know, must watch, can't miss.
I think it still is, but it's almost like not quite as much must watch.
You hit it. Both Dortmund and Bayern haven't been playing as well as I had hoped this season, and but it's still the best game on Saturday afternoon, so I'll check it out.
And I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and actually look at the game logs, but I think every time I check, Pulisic has just been getting a little bit less playing time, Christian Pulisic, and just from an American.
He's still in the lineup. He's still getting games. The World Cup heartbreak has, you know, for some players, it can really kill them for months on end. So just the fact that he's still getting in the lineup and still, he hasn't been scoring goals like he did before. And after the U.S. Missed the World Cup, I was really concerned that what effect is this going to have on Pulisic? He hasn't been as good as he was before for Dortmund, but he's still getting games, and he's still starting games, and he's still making contributions. I suspect any troubles he has right now are because the team is not
doing so well,
functioning well.
Yeah. In the Premier League, Manchester City and Arsenal play on Sunday in Manchester, and then Chelsea and Man United play in London, Stamford Bridge. Both really good matches.
Back to back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Don't even have to move off the couch.
I think if anyone can stop Man City this season, I'm not saying it will be Arsenal, but we will find out when they play Arsenal.
Okay.
Arsenal's not playing particularly well, but I think they're in 5th right now. Kind of flying under the radar. A lot of people wrote them off after last season's 5th place finish, but just they won 2 in a row, and things seem to be improving. But I'm expecting Man City to maybe to win the game.
Yeah. Well,
maybe not a big win, but
when I look at the Man United Chelsea matchup, it's sort of a prove it to me game for Manchester United because they've accumulated a lot of points in the early part of the season, and winning at Chelsea would be a real signature victory that isn't versus one of the lower level teams. And if they can go in there and get the victory, it's kind of all right, Manchester United really has a chance to compete for one of the top spots.
Yeah, it's a real statement opportunity for both Manchester United and their manager, Jose Mourinho, whom Chelsea fired just months after he led them to the title back in, I think that was 2014 or something like that. It'll be a big one, and I'm still not sold on Manchester United. They've been missing Paul Pogba since his hamstring injury. Chelsea's N'Golo Kante might play. He returned to training this week. We're not sure how much he has, how much he'll be able to give, but given his record, he'll probably still be everywhere because that's just what he does.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are our matches to watch this weekend. Any final word from you?
I got nothing.
You got nothing? I don't really have one either, but I am excited for this upcoming week, but I'm even more excited next week for our show because I think we'll talk a lot about World Cup playoff matches in the qualifying playoffs. Italy involved, some big name nations, and a lot to look forward to on the international weekend next weekend.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us this week. Make sure you join us next week for that, and enjoy the soccer this weekend.